Well, thank you so much for being here with us. I think we have a healthy group of people here already. Um, let's see if we have any extra people coming in. I do know we had a watch party happening. That was exciting to hear about. I think we have some people from live from campus that we're gonna tune in, and all these beautiful souls that are tuning in as well. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Um, do you want to get started?
Sure.
Okay. Perfect. So everyone brace with me because I just have to do a small little intro. I just want to say a big hello to our Highlights Foundation friends and family. We are so happy to have you here with us. And for those that may not know me, I'm Kat Galliano. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the social media manager here at the Highlights Foundation. And I'm joining you from Westchester, New York, on the traditional and contemporary lands of the Siwanoy people. I am also a writer and a reader who had the absolute honor to be here tonight with our friend and member of our community, Rhonda Roumani, who is celebrating her book birthday today. Well,
So
I just want to say I had the immense pleasure to read it already. So I was one of the lucky people that got to see it and get it delivered to my house. And let me tell you, I screamed when I got it because I was so excited to read, and I read it in one sitting. So that's how amazing this book was and how much I loved it. So we're going to talk about Tagging Freedom. And Tagging Freedom is a story that features two cousins, one in Syria and one in the US, whose worlds collide as they both navigate the complexities of cross-cultural adolescence. And before we jump in, Rhonda, I want to remind everyone here that you're joining in our highlight space with no hate, no harm, and no harassment of any kind. And now let's get started. Hi, Rhonda. Thanks for being here with me tonight on such a special day. I feel so, so honored.
I feel honored. I am such a huge, the highlights just means the world to me. And to be here with you today, it's just perfect. I don't know.
Yay. I feel the same way. I was like, yay, when we got a chance to connect. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to speak with Rhonda about this book, about being a fellow, about your writing journey, about all the things. So I guess we'll get started. So how are you feeling today? It's such a big day. This is your debut baby. Today is the day. And this is quite a powerful story. So tell me about it.
Um, it's exciting. I'm definitely excited. Honestly, I've had so many emotions today. I got to go to a school and share tagging freedom with kids for the first time, and that was amazing. And they were so curious and so attentive and so smart. And at first I was really nervous. I'm like, will they like what my book? And it was just amazing. I'm like, oh my God, I think this is going to be my favorite part, actually sharing it with the kids. So that part was really fantastic. I did wake up a tiny bit sad. I'm going to be honest. My mom passed away a month ago. So, but she got to read it, and my sister read it to her over
Hi.
a course of a couple weeks. And so she posted a picture online of her reading it to my mom. And I was just bawling in the morning. So I've had like a lot of emotions, but overall good because, you know, I'm just happy it's out in the world, especially given what's happening in the last month. It's been really hard on our community. So I hope it'll be a way that we can sort of talk about protest and how important it is too, especially with kids. So those are all the things I'm feeling today.
Lots of emotions. Well, first of all, I want to tell you that you are so loved, and this is such a special story. And I'm sure your mom is celebrating tenfold up from wherever she's watching. So, thank you for sharing that. I know that's something huge that's happening behind the scenes. So, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we are also lucky to read it, especially her. So that is so special to hear.
Yeah.
So, talk to us about Tagging Freedom. How did this story come about? Why why this messaging, and just talk a little bit about how that kind of happened.
Yeah. So as you know, I was not a kidlit writer. I never thought I would write fiction. I just didn't think I could do it. I love fiction. I just never thought I would write it. but I was a journalist, and I used to cover Syria and Lebanon a long time ago, before the revolutions happened, so in the early 2000s. Um, and sometime in like around 2016 or 2017, the war was happening in Syria, and I had been writing for adults, and I just realized we need to start younger. Like kids, yeah. And I also had a kid, and I had a, my daughter was very young, and I ran a book fair in her school, and when I ran her book fair, I didn't like see any books about Arabs by Arabs, and there was only one book by a Muslim, and that was the one by Malala Yousafzai, which
Mm-hmm.
is a very important story, but that is not
Yeah.
enough. Like there are a lot more stories in that. So I, at that point, was like, I think I'm gonna try to write a book. And me and a friend actually tried to together, and we wrote a book about a magical chest, which to this day I absolutely love. And we queried it, and that book didn't quite work out. We got a lot of requests for fulls, but they didn't really request the full thing. It didn't work. It didn't translate into an offer. And then sometime after that, I decided I don't know when it came to me, actually. I think that's a part I'm trying to remember. When did this come to me? I knew about the story of what happened in Syria already. And when what that other story wasn't working, I knew I wanted to do something different. I ended up writing an entirely different book. It's not the same book, but it had some of the themes that I had wanted to address in the other. I sort of those came over. But it's very much based off of sort of what happened, because the revolution was started by graffiti art.
Mm-hmm.
Kids graffitied on their school. So I sort of took that and then I ran with it. So yeah, that's sort of how it started, the whole process.
Listen, what can I tell you that when I was reading this and the parts where tiny spoiler, but the kids are graffitiing, my heart was thumping like crazy because the way you just built that scene and the way it was like them talking to each other, the timing, the pacing, I was like, like I think I was holding my breath. I was on a plane and the person next to me was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm actually really scared for these kids." So please, everybody, go run and get this book, because when I tell you, the person next to me on the plane had to make sure I was okay because I was panicking. That's how good the pacing and everything is. So I want to kind of jump a little bit into that journalism part that you were talking about. How has that impacted your fiction writing? Because obviously, being a journalist, you're writing nonfiction, you're writing news stories and covering, real life events. But how did you think that sort of weaved into your nonfiction and your kid lit?
Yeah, I think because of my journalism, I tend to want to base everything off of real life, everything. So, and even when I was writing, there's times where I was like, I would write something, I'm like, no, that can't have happened in that year. So there's no way I could put that right now. And then someone was like, you don't have to stick to that timeline exactly. I'm like, what? Like, so I definitely sort of culled a lot of what I wrote in Tagging Freedom from real life. And then when I discovered that I can really like play with, I tried not to play with the essence of what happened, but the timelines are sort of smushed sometimes. Like it didn't really, there's little things that are different. But I think the journalism background really was that, because I don't want it to be a teaching book, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider it a teaching book, because those sort of get annoying. I wanted it to be a story, and I think it is. But there's definitely a lot of real things in there too that happened, and so they're just the way they're framed has changed, obviously. So and when I was in Syria in like 2000, for example, I covered activists, and back then it wasn't a revolution. There weren't a ton out there, and I got to know a whole bunch of them, and they were amazing. And I saw my first protest in Syria, and I couldn't believe it. And so stuff like that, I sort of took that emotion that I to
Mm-hmm.
remember to this day, because I had never seen anything like that in Syria, and because I went frequently as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a place where they say the walls have ears. So you cannot really,
Mm-hmm.
it's very dangerous to do what they were doing. And I met them and I saw them trying to protest. And they were small numbers, but they were doing it. So I did take a lot of that kind of the feelings, the people I saw, the images that I had in my head. A lot of that came from those experiences. So I definitely took little elements of real life stuff and used that
Well,
too.
you did an incredible way of translating it and then fictionalizing it, because I'm telling you, I was ripping through those
Oh,
pages and I was like, I need to know what happens to these kids, what happens. Like it was just like it was palpable, like the power of your storytelling, from your journalism background and sort of translating that into fiction for children. It was just, I mean, your words flew off the page, and I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to have read this before speaking with you. And I'm going to tell you 100 times today, people, please go around and get this. It is such a special book. And also, I'm a former journalist myself, so I love when journalists kind of play in the kidlit space, and I'm always running after those books, because that's sort of my experience, is trying to find a way to fictionalize real life stuff, because I always want to try to get a timeline right. I'm like, wait a minute, I should be able to play here. So
absolutely.
that's where I'm always struggling too. So that's why I'm so excited to hear that from you. So this particular story is a story of two cousins, like we mentioned, Kareem and Samira. How did you go about choosing these two people, them being cousins, one being in Syria first, the other being Syrian American in Massachusetts, and then sort of one of them coming over? How did that kind of
Right.
happen?
So that actually was a thing that got transposed from the other book I wrote. It was about two cousins, but it's a totally different story. Um, this one, the cousins are definitely older. And they're different. They're facing totally different situations. But I really like the idea of trying to tell the story from two points of view, because I wanted, first of all, it helped me break up the story a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. I know it's hard to tell a story from two points of view, but I found it almost easier because
Mm-hmm.
I could break it down more. Um, but the reason I really wanted to do it was because I wanted also a vantage point that a kid here could really understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I hope they'll get into Kareem's story too, just as much. I think you can. But I thought it would help a little bit to be able to see his story through the eyes of his cousin, and vice versa, then understanding what it would be like for someone coming from the outside to see our lives a little bit too. So I wanted to play with that a little bit, especially because when I would go abroad, I often felt like I was seeing these two worlds that I was a part of, and that uh, somehow playing with that idea and sort of helping kids see the world from different vantage points. I really wanted to do that. So yeah, that's why.
Yeah, it was so well done, because Samira, being typical, sort of trying to be typical in America and fit in and be part of the squad and whatever else. But then the cousin comes and he's just like, what are, like, not totally not seeing her point of view. And she's like, why are you not seeing my point of view? But then like finding each other in the middle. And I thought it was beautiful that we were able to sort of jump into both their heads and see both their perspectives, and then ultimately see how they could see each other's perspectives. I loved how you included all these other cast of characters, like the best friend Ellie, who I adored in this book and was such a central character, sort of meandering between both the cousins and, all the other characters that are involved. And um, while I'm not Syrian, I am a first generation American, so I totally understand that eternal battle of sort of being there and not here, but
Mhm.
being here and not there, and sort of stuck between two cultures and not necessarily knowing where you fit in. So that resonated tremendously with me. And so it was really nice to see Samira sort of break that down to her cousin, because I feel like I've had that same conversation with my
Right.
relatives
Right.
abroad, and they're like, yeah, well, you're American. It's like, no, but I'm not really.
Right.
It's like that weird in between, but
Exactly. Yeah. You don't feel like you fit in either, exactly, in either.
exactly. So that's why, again, people, please go out and buy this book, because it was so, so well done, especially if you know what that feeling is like with being sort of stuck between two places. And what do you want people, but most importantly, kids, to take away from your book?
Um, I want kids to, so one of the things that they graffiti at one point, is Kareem is very frustrated about being in the US when his country is changing. He doesn't really want to be there at a certain point. Um, and so they graffiti, look outside your world, trying to sort of wake up some of this town. Like, please, people, just notice that there's something else happening. And I hope that that will help. Like, people will think about that a little bit, because oftentimes when it's not right in your backyard, you don't pay attention to it, but you can pay attention to it if you
Mm-hmm.
want. So I think that's one of the bigger ones. And there's factual things, like I think I really wanted to write this book because so many of the books out there about Syria for young people are about the war and the refugee crisis as well. And I wanted people to know why it started. I felt like we've lost that narrative. And it did start as sort of a call for freedom, as a revolution. And so I wanted also kids to understand that part too. So I think that part as well. Like there's so yeah, I think those are the two things of, our world. Every you can't It can't just be about our small
Yeah.
worlds. Like, it matters happening elsewhere, and we have to help in whatever way we can. And art is sometimes the best way to do it.
Yes.
So especially with graffiti, one of the things that I love about graffiti is that people think it's vandalism. Is it art? Is it vandalism? And that's a big part of the book. But oftentimes it is, when you can't like control the media, or you can't control, it is the best way to get your message across.
For sure.
And I think those are little ideas too. I wanted to get in, like, have kids sort of think about, why would someone write on a wall? Is it just because they're having fun? I mean, it's probably fun to write on walls, but and I told this kids today at school, do not do this at home, and definitely do not do it in your school.
That you wrote in this book, including as well the glossary. And I just like, because I already loved the story when I finished it, but I feel like when I read your author's note, it made me feel even closer to the story and totally understanding why you wrote the story, why it's important that this was written in the way that it was, and gave me just like background stuff that me, as a person navigating the world, just wasn't truly aware of. So I can't thank you enough for making that decision with that author's note, and also the glossary of terms, because who knows how my pronunciation was in my head during the reading. So it was really nice to have that at the end, to be able to circle back. And yeah, I want to kind of open it up to our people, that are here with us. If anyone has some questions for Rhonda, please go ahead and type them up. I'm going to just scroll to see
Can
if
I
there's.
say one more thing about highlights? Because
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say what a special place highlights has been for me as a storyteller. I was one of the Muslim storyteller fellows, and it was life changing, having a space that allows different groups to come in and be in community, and to form the bonds that we did, and get the help that we did. I mean, I I sold the book before I became a fellow, but I really had to edit a lot while I was a fellow. And so I had so much like feedback and help, and my mentor Hannah Khan was amazing, and all of the fellows are amazing too. So I just want to put a call out to
Yes.
the Muslim fellows, and I'm so excited that we're expanding it. Like the foundation is expanding it to more and opening and create and continuing to create space. So sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, no, because honestly, that was my question that I accidentally skipped. So thank you so much for bringing that back, for letting us know that you're a fellow, because obviously that was how you kind of joined our highlights community. So we are so thankful that you were a fellow in that inaugural sort of cohort of fellows. And I did see Autumn Allen, who wrote recently that they are watching us. So hi, Autumn and friends. Thank you so much for letting us know that you're watching us. And thank you for being part of our community. I mean, me as the person that runs the social accounts, I am incredibly passionate about our community members and supporting them just as they sort of pour into us and learning craft. So the only thing that I can think of is pouring back into them and celebrating their big moments, like a cover reveal, like a book birthday. So that's sort of like the full circle for me of seeing someone who was a fellow, took our courses, you know, had a book already in process, and now we're speaking together. So I feel like that full circle thing really makes me, as a person who runs our social accounts, super honored and happy. And yeah, we have quite a lot of questions coming in. So I feel like I should stop talking now and let me scroll back to see which one was the first one. I see, can you share the parts of yourself as a Syrian American that you've included in the book?
Oh wow. So much of it. Like I think all of it. My character Samira is so Syrian American to me. You know, it doesn't just, I think when you read an authentic book, like it just goes down to everything, you know, the way Samira and her best friend, who is also Arab, make fun of the little things their parents say in a fun, playful banter that they do with each other. Um, they, you know, the living room that she has, that's like she thinks is made, looks like it was made from the bottom of an ocean. And like, why is it so shiny in here? Because there's so much mother of pearl everywhere, you know, because that's what some of the so to me it was just so much a part of every part of her personality. So I don't want to ruin it by saying all the different ways. I hope if you're
I think that's a good one. I think
yeah,
honestly that's a good example from what I've read, because we
yeah,
don't want to give away too much.
yeah.
This one also, it could be, you could take it as you want, because it could be a little spoilery. But it says, Rebecca asked, do you have a scene that's a little extra favorite than others?
That's actually a really good question. I don't think I have a favorite scene. I do love one scene at the beginning when Kareem and Ellie meet for the first time. It's actually not the first time they met, but I don't know why I really love that scene. So maybe that one, but I don't think I have a favorite scene. There yeah, I don't know if I have one. I have to think about that one more.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you for who asked that,
Yeah.
Rebecca. Our next question is, what would you say to other Arab American authors who are curious to follow a similar professional path?
I would say I am so excited that you're there. And I would say, please do it. I really hope that we can get more Arab American and Arab authors out there. We do not have very many. And I would say the thing that I found most helpful was getting help. Like when you're doing it alone, it's really hard. And I actually, the first one, time I even started working with anybody was there was something called Pitch Wars, which doesn't exist anymore. And I met Rebecca Petrick, who's amazing as a mentor. And she really changed everything for me because I was a journalist and I'm writing, but I don't really know so much about writing. I didn't know how to write for kids, and I haven't written fiction before. And so she really was unbelievable. So find, you know, classes, take classes, find communities, find critique partners. Those are all so important. And find people who you like love to spend time with, and then find your critique partners. Sometimes they're different people. um, but write, you know, enjoy it too. I know people say write every day, and I don't do that because I'm not, I'm just not like that. I wish I was. But just right, like just, you know, because we have so many stories to tell, and it shouldn't just be one story. You know, it's one story from one publisher that's an Arab one. That's not enough. We need so many out there so people understand the diversity of every culture and every person and every group, because, you know, it can't, that much pressure can't be put on one author. So I am so excited that you guys are here, and I'm so excited to see more Arabs writing and Muslims writing and all groups writing, honestly, but especially Arabs, because there just aren't that many of us. So I'm very excited to hear that.
That is wonderful. And then our next question is, how do you find a balance between reality and keeping it PG enough for your younger audience?
That is a very good question, especially with this book. So I specifically wrote about, like, with the idea that I was going to write about only a specific moment in time, this way, way, way beginning before, and it didn't last very long in Syria. Because if I was to have written, someone said, "Oh, would you write a sequel?" I'm like, no way, because it would be a different book. It would be YA. It would be really sad, and I don't want to write that book. I just can't. My heart will break as I write the book. So, as it broke when it really happened. So, I do think when you're writing for middle grade, you don't want to crush their spirits. That, yeah, it's not a good idea. But at the same time, I do think kids are smart and they want to know, and they can handle more than we give them sometimes. And oftentimes in communities, especially minorities or of color, they don't have a choice whether to know these things, right? So I think keeping that in mind is really important. So, but how you deliver it, that was hard for me, because I didn't want to end on a totally happy note. Oh, everything's going to be great. I wanted to put a little, you know, there will be struggles. There was still going to be struggles in Cream's life, for example, because yeah. That's a really good question. It's one I struggled with as I wrote this book so much, because it is a sad story in the end. So yeah.
I also love that you said that if you ever did write a sequel, it would be a YA, and it would be just like just a sad story. Because I did find myself at the end of the book and was like, wow, what would happen next? Like, I mean, we know in reality what happens next, but
Yeah.
like, what would be his story, her story? And I was like, I don't know if I want to know that. I was like, yeah. That's why I loved your author's note at the end too, because it just sort of ended the book and it sort of brought your POV to it. And then I was like, okay, I feel whole now. I feel whole after reading this now.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions for us? Because we are running out of time, because it seems like Rhonda and I could chat forever, but she's got a busy night and got things to do. So if anyone has any last minute questions, please drop them in. And if not, we're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank you, Rhonda, and your whole team at Union Square for making tonight possible. I can't thank you enough for your time and for being here with us. And if you want to see Rhonda on tour, she currently is on tour. You know, check her social or check our website. We have that information for her tour dates if you want to see Rhonda in person. And of course, we are also promoting Rhonda's book that is being sold at her local indie Possible Futures. So I believe you can get a signed copy through Possible Futures if you order directly from them. And a sticker.
And
so
really
order directly from Possible Futures, or your local indie. But you know, everybody loves a little personalization on their books. Yes, and that's it from me. Thank you, Rhonda. I am so excited for the world to read your book, because I might have to read it again at this point.
Thank you so much, Kat. It's so great talking to you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.